All right, welcome to the class tonight. This is class, I believe, 22 on knowing the truth. In the past couple of classes, we've been looking at the reality of transformation and being transformed. And we're going to get into verses, maybe this class, maybe not, but verses where different words are used other than transformed, but it's the same word in the Greek. It's places where most people will not relate to what I'm saying as far as this being something different. When we talk about transformation, most of the time, one of the first verses we looked at in previous classes was Romans 12:2. Be not conformed to this world, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And the problem is in Christianity today, we equate transformation with conformity, conforming to religious ordinances and doctrinal stances and denominational laws, what we believe to be what God expects from us, and we conform our actions and our activities and all of our efforts toward that. That is not transformation. If someone stops drinking, we say, boy, their life was really transformed. Maybe they just stopped drinking. Could be. The transformation that the Scripture speaks of something inward. It speaks of a reality. And we've talked about that where it's the reality of coming, the gaze of my heart being brought from one form to another, from the form that, if you look at the two covenants, the first and the second, it's the testimonial form to the form that is substance and spirit and truth, that is Christ himself. It is my soul coming to behold the real and true perfect form that defines and fully measures everything the previous form spoke of. It is seeing a reality defined in the true, proper man, and therefore our expectation for the other man to live up to that is gone because we've seen the reality in another. We've seen it defined perfectly, measured fully in another man. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about transformation. It is not just the actions and activities of the body or whatever being conformed and changing. It's much deeper than that. So when Paul talks about in Galatians, and again, if you take it out of the context, you can make it mean anything you want, but we know the context of the letter to the Galatians and what that was about. So in the midst of it, in Galatians chapter 4, verse 19, he says, my little children, of whom I travail in birth again, until Christ be formed in you. What does that mean? He is relating this up against what they were attempting to do, up against the external exercises that they were convinced would bring them to a perfect right standing with God. And he says it in Galatians 3. He says, how can you, having begun in the Spirit, are you now made perfect in the flesh? And the word in the Greek, the word perfect there is to further perfect. How can you further perfect in flesh what's already perfect where you begin? In spirit. And that's what we do. Why? Because we are not beholding what is perfect, we're still assessing what is not. And so when we assess what is not perfect, instead of beholding the perfect one, we will apply every method possible to try to get that imperfect thing to look like the perfect. And we haven't seen the perfect yet. We don't even know the standard, the measure. The problem is we give all these things our own definition, our own personal interpretation. So, what is he talking about? Till Christ be formed in you. I'm travailing until Christ be formed in you. Well, we'll get into Colossians 2 because it has a lot to do with what he says there too. But he's saying, my desire for you, the thing that I hope and pray that will take place in your heart, is that the true form that Christ is, the Christ in all of his substance and perfection will be formed in you, and the true form of reality will fill your soul's perspective, will fill your heart, and you will no longer seek for the perfection or the reality in a previous form, in something that falls short of glory, something that falls short of spiritual truth and reality. My desire is that the true form will be formed in your soul, and that inward reality will anchor your heart to such a degree you'll never gaze outside of that one to behold anything ever again. That's the desire of Paul. That's the desire of the gospel. That's the hope of the gospel, as he says in Colossians. It is Christ in you, the one who is spoken of, testified of in every manner, every means that God could use. That one will not be present, because if you're born again, he's present, but his presence will become made aware of. You will come to the acknowledgement of who he is presently. There will be a greater form that is seen. Just think about how difficult it was for those, and these are the things. And this is, we can turn to Colossians in chapter 2, and this is one of the things that was a struggle. Now he's talking to the Colossians, but look at the Jews who had a system that God himself had implemented. For thousands of years it stood, and now here comes Jesus saying, it's about me. Come unto me. I know the Father. The Father knows me. You must come to me to have the rest for your soul. You labor and toil under this system, under this form, but I'm the only one that truly possesses the relationship with the Father that you're after, and that you're trying by those means to attain. Come unto me. Take my yoke upon you. I mean, how difficult would it be for someone to say, oh yeah, these forms are nothing. Oh yeah, they're meaningless. What was the thing that brought Paul's heart to such? From seeing a form where he gloried and boasted in, say circumcision, where circumcision was, and these are the things we're going to get into, where a man who once boasted in circumcision of the flesh can say, circumcision does not mean anything, it doesn't avail, and neither does uncircumcision. He didn't go from the one extreme to the other as we do and take one side or the other. He realized none of it was worth anything. None of it availed anything in the sight of God. It meant nothing in God's sight. Why? Because he has seen the one who is the sight of God. He's seen the one that God looks upon and whom his gaze is set upon and who defines and measures reality in his sight. And when that's the one that you are beholding, you realize none of this matters. Neither of these things apply in this reality. They have no place. I have no place, good or evil. It's not, I am not permitted here. Nothing of me determines anything here. And this is the liberty of knowing the truth. This is the thing that they basically argue with Jesus about when he tells them, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. These are Jews who's had this system God himself gave to them for all of these years. And he is saying to them, you don't know the truth. If a Jew doesn't know the truth, what does it mean? How can you say that? The thing that they really took up as an insult was the fact that he says, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. And they said, we've never been in bondage to any man, disregarding their entire history. But then he says, no, your bondage is sin. The bondage is sin. We'll get beyond this when we're looking at it, but let's not think he's saying you do a lot of bad stuff. You sin all the time. That's your problem. And you need to be free from doing all the bad stuff that we call sin. What he's talking about is something that is less than truth, something that falls short of the truth. It's that which falls short, that which does not reach the mark. And that's everything. That's you and me. That is if you want to go to the law, the prophets, all of it. As long as that is the thing that occupies you, as long as that is where your heart is, there is no freedom. There is no liberty. And this is not liberty or license to the flesh. And here's the point. Your self-righteousness that you obtain through all of your righteous actions and observances is a license to the flesh. When you believe in some way, shape, or form, you have defined something of spiritual reality, and you look at yourself and say, that's righteous, that's holy, that's a license. That's taking liberty as a license to the flesh. Paul's not talking about all of the stuff we talk about when we say sin. He's talking about an approach to God. How you define your relation to God. Or how you believe God defines his relation to you. The truth frees the soul from such bondage. Because it removes that object that has no place. And leaves the only object that is, and that has right. The only thing that the Father gazes upon and delights in. And that is his Son. And knowing the truth is the soul beholding that Son, or you could say it as Hebrews says it, seeing salvation without reference to sin. That's knowing the truth. And it's a liberty that comes into the heart of knowing, not I, but Christ liveth in me. That's the rest, the liberty, the freedom. Stand fast, therefore, in that freedom. What's the whole context of that? The distinction between Isaac and Ishmael. The fruit that pleases God and what man calls fruit. It's the ugliest picture. That's you at your best. That's man at his best, trying to approach God, and God beholds his Son. It's the fruitful vine of Aaron, and he shows to the people. So here is the heart of Paul, that Christ be formed in you, superseding all previous concepts, ideas, definitions, measurements, religious ideologies, superseding all of that, showing you reality that far exceeds it, that is above, that is outside of the reference of earth. Truth, again, we've said it, the truth has no reference point in the earth. It has no reference point in man whatsoever. It is Christ all. And when he speaks of the Christ being formed in you, he is speaking of the soul experiencing the truest form of reality. The Spirit revealed reality overcomes all previous things. That's how it works. By reason of the excellency of the knowledge of God, I have counted all as loss. So, I said we'd get in Colossians 2 because this is the very thing that he is talking about in Galatians 4, Christ being formed in you, because they are being swayed by Judaizers to go under the law to find righteousness. This is the same thing the Colossians are doing. So let's look at these verses. Beware, this is verse 8. Beware lest any man should spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world. This is the elements of testimony, the elements of the age of Judaism, and not after Christ, for in him dwells all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. And ye are complete in him, which is the head of all principality and power. Ye are complete in him. He sets forth first this premise of completion and perfection in Christ himself. That is a settled issue, a done deal. And then he speaks of letting no man deceive you or judge you. This is verse 16. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect to a holy day or of a new moon or of a Sabbath days, which are a shadow of the things that were to come, but the body is of Christ. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility and worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he, this is King James, which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. Now, a couple of things. Let no man beguile you of your reward. This speaks not of keeping you from it, but beguiling you from it. Not saying the reward, the victory is not yet done, the reward's not yet given. It's deceiving you, beguiling you of a reward that's already present, a prize that's already there. It is the same prize that Paul says that I may apprehend. The prize, the mark, the prize of the high calling. This is the same prize. It's not something he's yet to get. It's something he desires to know and apprehend in its fullness. Man would deceive you and beguile you of this by bringing in false objects, false things, you into the picture at all. Deviating your soul from truth, deviating your mind from reality. Showing you all of these things that you can apply to yourself to become whatever it is you believe God desires you to become. These are the things that we're talking about. These are shadows of that which was to come, but until you see the one who has come, these shadows seem very real. Why? Because you could touch them, handle them, taste them, and these are parts of the deal. What does he say? Touch not, taste not, handle not. This is what we call Christianity. It's what we call living righteously. Touch not, taste not, handle not. Those things are our focus. And for Paul, it wasn't the thing to focus upon, it was the thing to shun. There was a greater focus that he was about to describe to them. He was saying these things, these elemental things, these fragmented things. And in the King James, it's not intruding. And look at that word, intruding. They are intruding in a place they do not belong. Because those shadows were never a testimony of them. Those elements were never a testimony of them or me or you, and for them to do that, they are intruding. The word actually means to step your foot where it does not belong. And look at the word. King James says it wrong. It is not, hath not seen. The things which he hath not seen, it's actually the things he has seen. Because he can see these things. You could see holy days, festivals. You could observe that. You can observe the circumcision of the flesh and involving yourself in all of the outward ceremonial evidences that look so impressive. All of the things that to you validate your spirituality. And show the world, and more importantly, show God how devoted you are. And Paul says looking at those things that can be seen, that form that is visible to a natural eye, the same, they become vainly puffed up by their fleshly mind, not holding the head, separating everything from the person of truth, the person of reality, giving it our own personal, private interpretation, definition, and guess who that looks like? It's me. It's me, of course, looking like Jesus, but it's me nonetheless. It is these things that we see, that we apply to us when we still see us and we still have ourselves in view, ourselves in the picture, ourselves as the object to which God looks at and says, I'm waiting on you to impress me, waiting on you to finally get it, measure up, get your act together. It's never the point. You can live in this land of illusion and darkness and shadows for the rest of your days and call that Christianity. Or you can do what Paul says. Seeing that you are risen with Christ, set your affection above. And we're going to get into places where God says, your thoughts are not my thoughts, your ways are not my ways. As far as heaven is above the earth, so are my ways higher than yours. That's a significant thing. That's not a gulf that is filled by your religious observance. That's not a gulf that's ever filled. It's either above or it is me. Set your heart not on the things of the earth. What is that? Is it talking about ping pong, football, watching the bowl games, watching a movie, and when you're trying to pray, you think about that movie and get condemned? That's not earthly things. It's in the context of religious application of religion to try to present yourself before God. It's trying to stand beside the high priest and say, me too. With a cardboard cutout that says, holy unto God, when he's got the mitre. That's not going to happen. No more did it happen then than it happens now, and much more so. He has set his king upon his holy hill. He has made the decree in the mountain. And that decree will not be changed just because you pray more than you used to. We must see the one who is above. If not, our assessment will forever be in the earth. And we will divide the earth into good and evil, spiritual, not spiritual. Righteous, not righteous. And yet, we've yet to see the true meaning of all of it above. Because that's the truth. That's where the truth, if it's, we've said it many times, if it's out of the Spirit, if it's not Spirit, then it is not truth. If it is you in any way, shape, or form, it is not truth. It does not measure anything, define anything, or determine anything. It can mean a lot to you, but it doesn't mean anything in reality. Not in truth. So, set your affection. And when Christ, our life, appears, the Christ that is hidden, the Christ that the eye can't see, the ear can't hear, that's why we love touch not, taste not, handle not. That's much better. Because there we can assess how well we're doing or not. Just like the fruit of the Spirit and the works of the flesh, and we can see, well, do I have more of this than this? That's what we like. Not I, but Christ has none of that comparison. There is no comparison when there's one. Then you're not just not comparing one to another. You're not comparing you with Jesus. No, you just see Jesus. And you realize that's the one that delights the Father. Why do I need to? I remember years ago getting in trouble when I said, He is the Son of God's love, and we desire just to be loved too. We want to be loved too. So we do what we can to try to get love too from God. We want to be loved also. And the fact is, the love of God is shed abroad in our heart. The person of God's love lives in you, yet we want to say, He loves me too. So we have the one that delights God, that pleases Him fully, that is the fullness and ultimate intention of God, dwelling on the inside of the soul, and we want to prove something too. We want God to look at us too and say, good job. His delight is His Son that is in us. Set your heart unto His appearing. And when He appears, your life appears. And when your life appears, you see reality as it has always been. And everything you've tried to see, observe, and produce with your touch not, taste not, handle not, do good, observe this, observe that, you will realize the foolishness of such a thing because you've seen perfection as it truly is. And it has no reference point in you. And while that may seem awful, it's rest for the soul. Because the soul finds the very thing it was created for. Finds light and life and truth. No longer in the seen, trying to define the unseen reality by the seen things. Truth must come. The true form of all things must appear, and the previous forms are seen to be nothing. We've said it already, I think, in previous classes, but when Peter and the others were on the mountain and Jesus was transfigured, and he said, man, this is good. Let's build 3 tabernacles and keep this going. This is a good thing. God doesn't say, no, stop looking at those 2. Just look at Jesus. Stop looking at that. Just look at Jesus. Now He just brings a cloud over the whole thing, and only one remains. There's not a passing distant shadow of the first 2. They're not mentioned again. It's not even referred to again. They see no man save Jesus only. God reveals His Son. He doesn't take away the other. He reveals His Son, and the other's not there. And He says, this is it. Hear ye Him. And that has been the reality from your new birth. That's the reality of those who are in Him, who is life, who is the resurrection. This is the reality that you come to the moment you are born again. No man save Jesus only. The one that Jesus heals, that He says, after the first touch, He says, I see men as trees walking. Well, Jesus didn't say, well, it'll get better. Just let that wear off. That'll get better with time. Or practice, squint a little bit. Maybe you won't see man. That's what religion does. There was a second touch. The second touch had to come. The second had to appear. And when the second touch comes, He says, I see all things clearly. Now, some translations say, I see all men clearly, but in the Greek, in the original, men is not found there. The word man or men is not found. It says, I see all clearly. All things are clear. Why? Because the man that the previous still had in view is not there anymore. clearly means I see him and him alone. Not I, but Christ. I see the singleness of God's perspective, and that is the view that my heart is set and fixed upon. And I'm no longer trying to unlearn the lie. I'm just desiring to know the truth. As long as you're still trying to unlearn the lie, then good luck. Knowing the truth is the answer. Seeing Christ is the answer. Not seeing less and less of you, but seeing him. That's the only answer. We're talking about the transformation, and let me, before I get real short of time here, the letter to the Hebrews is the same. We know the theme of the letter to the Hebrews. It is to show them how Christ is surpassing and better and greater than the first covenant, the law, and everything that pertains to it, every element of it, how he is the fullness of it. It starts off, God hath spoken in Son. He's spoken all of these other ways. Now he has uttered his final, so be it, amen, in his Son. Now, unfortunately, when we get to chapter 2 and we begin to talk about man, we take it out of the context and we say, well, I wonder why he's talking about man here. He was talking about Moses right before that and the house. And he's talking about all this stuff. Why? Because that's the order. When you're talking about what surpasses, what has brought about the surpassing glory, when you say that Christ is better, the first thing that has to be addressed in the order is man himself. Because if man is not addressed in the order of this thing first, then guess what? He's going to take all this other stuff and it's going to be his playground. All these other elements and superseding elements. So you've got people saying, well, it's a greater kingdom. It's a better covenant, a greater kingdom. And man will say, yes, we're the greater kingdom. We're the Melchizedek order of priests. You've missed the order. Man's the first thing addressed here. Why? Because you have to know who is the man that measures, defines, and is the face and name of this new creation. Who lives here? What man determines all things concerning this creation and this covenant? So what's the answer? This is the catalyst for this transformation we're talking about. Because that's what he's doing. He's bringing, the word Hebrews means to cross over. They have crossed over from one to the other, from the natural to the spirit. But in their hearts have yet to experience this transformation and this transition. So they are not knowing the rest that he goes on and speaks of in chapter 4. There still seems, as he says at the beginning, and I love it the way he says it, there still seems to be a rest. The promise of entering into his rest, you should seem to come short of it. They still believe they're short of it. They're still being told these things are still valid because they're still here. Come back to the things that are seen, these elements that have external evidence. Come back to that. That has to be real. Hebrews will go on to say, however, we have not come to a mountain that can be touched. We haven't come to anything external, natural, evidenced in that way, a kingdom that can be observed with ocular evidence, as it says. But you have come unto Mount Zion, heavenly Jerusalem. Well, this is the first thing in all of that transformation, that transition, is man himself. So here's the dilemma that religion tries to fix. But one in a certain place testified, this was out of the Psalms, what is man? Thou art mindful of him, or the Son of Man that thou visitest him. Made him a little lower than the angels, crowned him with glory and honor, and did set him over the works of thy hands. Has put all things in subjection under his feet, for in that he put all in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him. But now we see not yet all things put under him. That's the problem that we try to fix. I don't see it yet. I had people years ago, one of the big things when I was first born again in the circle that I was in was, I haven't seen it yet. And people say, well, I'm trying to be like Jesus. I'm trying to live good. And you're like, you're not showing me a thing. I hadn't seen it. So I tried harder. Say, oh, I'm just hearing a bunch of talk. You're not showing me anything. I didn't realize they needed to see Jesus to see what I was trying to show them. And I did too, thinking I had to show it to them, or could. So he's like, oh, you've done all this and you set man over your hand. We don't see this. We don't see this manifest. This is not evident. Look at man. He's a mess. So we try to fix it. We try to get that problem remedied as quick as we can with every method of religion. Everything we possibly can throw at him. And the answer never comes. Why? Because the answer is not found in that first man. The first man was never God's intent. He was never supposed to be the end. He was a testimony at best. We don't see all things under him. Here's the answer. But we see Jesus. Here's the transformation. Here's where it begins and where it continues. Not, we don't see man yet the way he should be, the way you want him to be, the way you have set forth for him to be, and we're going to do our best to fix it. Hebrews, in doing this whole transition from the first to the second, from the natural to the spirit, from what falls short to what is perfect, has to make that transition first with reference to man. You're trying to find it in the wrong man. You're trying to find everything God intends in the man in whom it is not intended to be found. The answer is we see Jesus. There's the transitioning that must take place, the transition of the heart. It begins there. There was something. Yeah, here it is. First thing that is addressed in this journey of knowing the truth is what man defines, determines perfection. What man is the substance and the subject of the new creation. What man measures a salvation that is without sin. That has to be addressed first. That is addressed not in him saying, don't look at that man, that sorry excuse for anything again, but we see Jesus. That's when the true transition begins to take place, and that's where it continues. In the seeing of Christ, you see the man that defines a new creation. You see a rest that God has given and a rest that remains for the people of God. You see the promises of God, yes and amen. You see the covenant of God secured. You see the better reality that has come because you're not trying to make what is not good that which is better, that which falls short, that which is perfect. Because the transformations happen, the transition. There is a sanctification that comes in the knowledge of truth. the knowledge of the person of truth, when that person, that man comes into view, then you see all things defined. This is what it means, and we're not going to get into those verses yet, but this is what it means when it says that everything, nothing is hidden from the sight of him. Nothing. So we try to think, oh God, he saw what I did last night in my bedroom. Well, you probably don't care. That's not what it's talking about. Nothing is hid from the sight, because this has to do exactly with the dividing of the Word of God, the dividing between flesh and spirit, the dividing. That's right on the heels of that. And then right before he says, it is him with whom we have to do. And the word is actually, it is him with whom we have our reckoning. All things are bare, nothing hidden from him. I take that directly to the Holy of Holies, where he sees all things. He sees all things defined in one. It's not he's gazing upon everything to make sure, checking his list to make sure it's right. He's seeing all things perfectly, unveiled, not covered, clearly in the face of one. And it is that one he desires to bring into the gaze of my soul, so that the division he refers to and the rest that he refers to as the consequence of that division, as the present and continual effect of such a division, brings about. It is seeing Jesus. It is seeing the one who measures everything in the sight of God, everything in this new creation, everything God has done and wrought, everything that God intends and desires, every requirement of God, he desires you to see in and as the person of his Son, who is living in your soul. This is when the transformation happens. And we're going to talk about a lot of different areas and a lot of places that I'm challenged in right now. Because we want to talk about, the truth, and we talk about sanctification. We talk about circumcision of the heart and knowing the truth. And man, what a thing. But I'm telling you, it challenges every religious bone in your body. Because we still, knowing the truth is single. Knowing the truth means there's only one. The truth means there's only one. Means there's only one definition of spiritual reality. There's only one definition, or one who can define and evidence in perfection all spiritual things. Righteousness, holiness, goodness, all of it. There's only one. It's singular in its context. It's singular. Therefore, it can't be me too. Knowing the truth brings your heart face to face with the I am. And there's no room for another. The I am the truth. But we see Jesus. Set your affection above. See, the directive is always that way. It's always toward his face, never toward your own. Never toward the assessment of man to see if he measures up. Because guess what? I'll go ahead and help you there. You don't. And you won't. He is. There is no other way to say it. He is everything God desires. Everything God delights in, he is. God doesn't need you to add to it. He doesn't need me. It's called the gift of grace. He has given to the soul what the soul had no hope of, and that is a fellowship, a relationship, a covenant. He has given to the soul everything, all fullness. Now let no man beguile you of this reward. of this prize that is already present. Let no man direct your heart into seen things and saying, if you delve into and apply these seen things, you will reap an unseen spiritual harvest. Set your affection above, not those earthly things, because those are the earthly things he's talking about. Religious pursuits, desire toward God by observance of rites and ceremonies or whatever we come up with now. And it is in the appearing of Christ, who is our life, when we see all as it truly is, see reality as it has been from the moment of new birth in his appearing, we are able then to mortify the members that are upon this earth. Or as he says right after that, it's not a prerequisite. Get rid of this and then he'll appear. It is the appearing and then mortifying. It is counting as lost, reckoning as dead. Those members that are on the earth, that means the members that have tried to pursue earthly pursuits toward God, and you can reckon it as lost. It's the very same list, almost exact list, that he talks about in the works of the flesh. That's when you're able to count all of that as nothing, count it as loss. The wretched man that you are, you're able to relinquish your hope in that man at all because you've seen the other. You've seen the man. You've seen Jesus. And your hope, the hope of God, the hope of the soul is fully, perfectly realized. We see Jesus. That's the answer. That's when the true transition begins to affect the soul. It's already taken place. The transformation, the transition, all of it's taken place. It's true. I'm talking about the truth of it, the reality of it, the realization of what is real coming into the soul and bringing the clarity and the singleness of this. So, we'll stop there today and pick up where we left off in our next class. Appreciate you being with us. Amen.